So during the unboxing that I did of this watch right here, my newest purchase, the Omega Seamaster Trilogy 1957, a reissue of the original Seamaster from 1957, the CK2913, a watch that was actually worn by Jacques Cousteau. I mentioned a watch that reminded me of this watch, and that is the Mido Ocean Star Tribute. And I said that because it genuinely reminds me of the Omega. It feels very similar on your wrist, and you get a lot of the same sort of, I don't know, vintage feel from this watch. And also got me thinking, I have another watch that really does feel very similar on the wrist when compared to this Omega, and of course the Mido, kind of similar, and that is the Christopher Ward Dive Timer. This is the C65. It's their sort of vintage inspired case, so it takes inspiration from vintage divers. Now, it doesn't have heritage like the other two brands, and it's not really a reissue. It's actually their own design, but obviously you can see a lot of inspiration from brands like Omega and Rolex and all these others. However, these two are obviously heritage reissues from the respective brands. So Mido, it's a reissue of an Ocean Star, and then obviously a reissue of the Seamaster. This is not, but it definitely has the quality, and I say this all the time. I was actually talking to Rock the Watch about this the other day. Matt Stingray over at Rock the Watch YouTube channel. We were talking about the quality that Christopher Ward offer versus the price, and I think it's pretty substantial. Now, the prices on these watches, this was a $7,000 watch when it was released. It's sold out, and they are actually selling well above that price now because you can't buy them. This is currently available. I think they go for $1,150. They make a few different colors. You can get it on straps, which would be a little bit cheaper. However, I highly recommend this bracelet, and we're going to go into some of the reasons why in just a minute. And then here, the C65. Now, the dive timer is also sold out. This is a limited edition of 150 pieces, also selling above retail. However, they make it an automatic, which would be actually closer to the two that are right here. They make it with a black dial, and I looked it up. That price on that watch in 41 millimeters, just like this, looks very similar. I think it's a little bit thicker than this watch, is $1,100 or $1,050, somewhere around there, on the bracelet. Now, what I'm trying to say here is that you get about 85 to 90% of the wearing experience that you get wearing this watch with these watches. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Now, I'm going to pick up the Omega very quickly and show you just a couple of the features on this watch, and then we'll go and look at the other two watches that we have on the table. Now, just starting with the bezel. This is a very thin bezel. It's aluminum, and it's like double hardened or something like that, and whatever they say on the Omega website. But it is an aluminum bezel insert because obviously it's a vintage watch, and they went with the vintage material or vintage style material. You get a domed, boxed sapphire crystal. Now, I think that's really important. With a vintage inspired watch, you want something that is boxed and domed because it definitely gives that vintage look. A plexiglass would probably work the best, but a lot of people don't want that, including myself. In a watch this price, I would prefer a sapphire, and it does come with a sapphire. Now, this has a beautiful bracelet on it. It does not taper. However, it has quick release, and it has a really great micro adjust on it that is excellent. You get about 10 millimeters of micro adjust, and it does look very vintage. It's a flat link bracelet. It's very solid. It's all milled. So it's sort of a vintage look with a modern case and obviously a modern movement. So in here you're getting a coaxial movement, which is META certified. So it's a master chronometer. And it's just really, really nice. One other thing that I always like to point out, with cheaper watches, you do get sort of rickety crowns. So it doesn't matter if you're buying a brand new, a lot of brand new micro brands, they have good crowns, but they don't have smooth crowns like you get on a true luxury watch. And it just pops out. You hear like an audible click or a pop to it. It clicks out into the first position. This is a dateless watch. Obviously, it hacks, and it's just very very smooth in the operation. The second hand doesn't move. Now, I'm not saying that that's only available in this watch, and I'm about to show you two watches that do the exact same thing and offer a very similar feel in the crown for a lot less money. Now, I said this is a $7,000 watch, so keep that in mind. The bezel on here, I mean, it's not that great. It sounds okay. It is bi-directional, which is different from the other two watches. I think this is where this watch sort of differs a little bit from the other two. Also, you get female end links on here, which is really good. And in general, it's just a really nicely sized watch. It's 39 millimeters. It's like 14 millimeters thick. I just did the measurements in the recent unboxing video, and I'll put a link to that. And it's like 49 millimeters lug to lug. Now, the reason why I said it reminds me of the Mido Ocean Star is because of the fact that this is very similar in size, but also pretty similar in quality. Now, I know that's going to be a pain point for a lot of people. A lot of people are probably going to get mad that I said that, but it's true. You're getting about 85% or 80% of the quality that you're getting from that Omega. It's just that extra 20% that you're paying for. And unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. Also, the heritage, it is an Omega. Even though the Mido has pretty decent heritage, you get a very similar non-tapering bracelet. It's not similar in style, it's just similar in the fact that it doesn't taper, but it's beautiful. It is really a beautiful, beautiful bracelet. You get push pins on here, so there is the first sort of give on this watch. And then, of course, you get a really nice milled buckle. It has double deploying, it's all milled. And you do get a micro adjust. The micro adjust isn't as nice as it is on the Omega, obviously, but again, this is a lot cheaper of a watch, and it's not nasty. It's beautiful. It actually operates very smoothly, as smooth as the Omega. It's just not as clean looking, I guess. And it's also sort of a dive extension, I guess you would call it. You know, it's nothing too crazy. Inside, you get a pretty decent movement. It's not obviously a Metas certified movement, but it is a Powermatic 80, and you're getting 80 hours of power reserve with this watch, so it's actually more than the Omega, and you get pretty decent bezel action. Very loud, and it's actually pretty, I think it actually does not wobble very much. Let me just make sure yeah, it does wobble a little bit, but it's pretty good. And you get that domed boxed sapphire crystal, as I mentioned. This is 40 millimeters. I think this is basically 40 millimeters spot on, just about 40 millimeters. So 39.7, depending on where you catch it, 39.6. So it's just a smidge bigger than the Omega, and it is 13.5 millimeters thick. So it's actually a little bit thinner than the Omega. And then you don't get female end links, but the end links are very, very short on this watch. So you're getting around 49 millimeters, just a little bit bigger than the Omega, 46 if you do it at the case, 47 almost at the case. So you're getting a lot of the experience. Like I said, you get that vintage dial. I didn't put faux patina on the Lume, so it does have basically creamy Lume, I would call it. It's not bright white, but it's like a slight off-white Lume, I guess you would call it. And then you get a black bezel insert. So very classic looking black dial, black bezel, printed indices. Very similar, again, to that Omega. And I'll put them side by side so you can see what I'm saying. I mean, it's really, the setup is very, very similar. Obviously, the watches don't look very similar. However, the setup of the watches are similar. I mean, they're both dive watches. You have black bezels, black dials. Just a little bit of color on the Mido. Very similar sizes, really beautiful bracelets. Then the next watch, and you know, obviously the final watch in this video, is the Christopher Ward. Now this is, as I mentioned, a larger watch. So this is 41 millimeters, I believe, but it is thinner than the other two. So it's 41.2 millimeters is what I've measured. You do get male end links, so you do get a larger lug to lug on here as well. So it's a little over, almost 51 millimeters. Get a giant crown on here, 6.9 millimeters. But where it's at is the thinness. So the thinness on this is pretty damn good. 11.8 millimeters thick. You also get a very domed boxed sapphire crystal, very similar to the Mido. not as similar to the Omega. It's a little bit different. This is a little bit more domed than boxed. I actually like this a little bit better. I really like the way that this is boxed out. I really do like that. And you get a very thin bezel on here. Also a metal insert. I believe it is aluminum. Really good bezel action. This gets a Sellita SW210, so that's why it's so thin. It's not an automatic. However, they do make automatic versions of it. I think it is thicker. But if you can get one of these with a black dial, I don't know, man. It's very, very close. It's really close to this. They actually look pretty similar, and I'll throw a picture of the black dial up. It looks pretty damn good. You do get a tapering bracelet on here. The bracelet on here is really nice, and one of the nicest things about Christopher Ward, you do get that double deployant, and then you do get, of course, micro adjust, and you get a really good amount of micro adjust, about 10 millimeters on here of micro adjust, and it is very smooth. It operates very, very well. Christopher Ward do a really good job with bracelets. Again, you don't get screwed links, you get push pins, but again, like I said, you're getting like 85 to 90% of the experience with a fraction of the price. Literally, you could buy 7 of these for the price of this. You can't even buy the Omega now. And you can see side by side again, just like a vintage inspired version that is sort of a version of a dive watch that is sort of pulling from a lot of different watches to take its inspiration from. And even the dial on this watch specifically takes inspiration from Mido and a few other brands for that decompression timer on the dial. Very interesting watch. Really quickly, I'm going to throw all 3 of them on my wrist and show you how they look on my 7.5-inch wrist. But before I do, today I'm wearing another vintage inspired dive watch. And you can see a theme here. I own all of these watches. These are watches that I've bought with my own money. And I love, this is the Bull of Mill Ships. This is the limited edition re-release of the Mill Ships. Again, you can see a theme with me, re-released divers. This is another one that was never made, but just an awesome watch. Should really be alongside these watches here, but you can't get a bracelet on here because they put a period accurate 16 millimeter strap on here. So you can see it's very, very thin. It would not look good on a bracelet. So very quickly, I'm going to throw the Christopher Ward on my 7.5-inch wrist. It's a 41 millimeter watch, but it's really thin. Awesome watch. Very, very comfortable watch. Like I said, I took this on vacation with me. I like it so much. I took it with me on a 2-week vacation, and I wore it very, very often. I took tons of pictures and videos with it. I love it. It's just an awesome watch. Really great for travel as well. It's pretty much go anywhere, do anything. It's 150 meters of water resistance, which is great. I don't really need more than that, so it does work very, very well. And here is the Mido on my wrist. Now, I think I did an unboxing of this pretty recently, and I just love this watch. It is a good-looking watch. It is all polished. So that is something to think about. I mean, the Christopher Ward is very, 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 very little polishing on it, just on the flanks of the watch. Such a nicely finished case on here as well. Really, they both have very nicely finished cases. But this is a lot flashier, even though it's sort of subdued dial side, and it's a little bit wilder on this watch. You do get a pretty subdued dial. However, everything else is polished, and it is pretty, I don't know, blingy in light. And then last but not least, of course, and definitely my favorite of the bunch, but I'm biased towards it because I did spend a lot more money on it than the other 2 watches, and that is the Omega. Now, the Omega obviously is the smallest out of the bunch too, so 39 millimeters. It does not have crown guard, so the 40 millimeter watch does, the Mido. And you can see it wears pretty incredible on my 7.5-inch wrist. It's a very, very comfortable watch, and I've been wearing it for, since the moment it came, basically. I cleaned it up, put it on my wrist, because I did buy it pre-owned. I gave it a good washing, and then I threw it on my wrist, and I've been wearing it pretty much nonstop since. And I love it. I think it's just a good-looking, well-made watch that is just pretty phenomenal. But the whole point of this video is that for what you're paying for this versus these two watches, you're getting a lot of that same wearing experience at a fraction of the price. And that's just the truth. It really is. You're getting micro adjust bracelets that are really well made. You're getting beautifully finished watches with interesting dials, very good bezel actions, and they are divers. So you're getting really nice operation. And that was the other thing I was going to talk about. The operation on the crowns on these watches are very, very smooth. The Mido is very, very smooth, even when compared to the Omega. Now you do get a day date here, so that is a little bit different, but you could see it is smooth as butter. It just feels really good, and you can see there's a little bit of wobble in the second hand. You don't get that with the Omega, but I mean, it's really not that big of a deal. Everything feels really high quality, and it just screws beautifully in. It's like butter. There's no grinding. It doesn't feel weird. A lot of like watches that are powered by an NH35 that you get from micro brands, or even a movement that I really like, the 9000 series from Mido, you still get that. And I like that you don't get that with these Swiss made movements. And there you go. So it pops out really nicely. And again, very, very, very smooth. And this is Solita, no wobble in that second hand. Really nice. Just a beautiful, beautifully made watch. So very quickly, let's do a lume shot, because I know that the dive timer does not have great lume. I know this does not have great lume. However, I think this actually might have the best lume on the table, which would be surprising because usually Omega, not that great. So let's do a quick lume shot and then we'll wrap up the video. Okay, well, there you go. I mean, it's kind of disappointing. You know, the lume on the Mido is not great. The lume on the dive timer is okay, but it's nothing crazy. And the Omega, it's pretty good. It's much better than the other two, but it's not, for the price tag, it's nothing too crazy. But then again, they are vintage-inspired dive watches, and I think that they accomplish that. They do a good job of giving you that vintage watch feel, that vintage watch look. And for these two, you're getting it at a fraction of the price. For this one, obviously, you're paying a lot more. Is it worth it? Absolutely, but for the reasons that are very hard to justify when compared to these two watches. That's all I'm trying to say. For 90% of it, you're getting everything that you need from these two watches. A lot of the quality, the fit, finish, and quality, and the look. I think you get it from these two watches for literally, a fraction of the price. But tell me what you guys think in the comments below. I think this is the whole point of watch collecting. You have to experience the different levels of watch collecting, and then you make the decision for yourself, basically. I've decided to buy all three of these watches, plus that Bulova that I just had on a few seconds ago. So you guys know that I really do have sort of an affinity or a problem for vintage style dive watches and also vintage watches, basically. So I love to look at this and compare them and see what you get for your money. Now, it's that extra 20% or 10% that we were talking about that you're paying for here with the Omega. Is it worth it? I don't know. But that's completely up to the person who's spending the money. It's your money, and you have to enjoy your watch. That's the bottom line. You have to love it. Otherwise, don't buy it. Anyway, tell me what you guys think in the comments below. I want to hear from you guys. Please also don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. It is super helpful for the channel. I very much appreciate it. Please follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is WatchChrisBlog. I have some links in the description. Those links are to Amazon. If you click those links and buy anything, it helps support the channel. It doesn't cost you anything extra. However, I very much appreciate it. Anyway, thank you for logging on. I'll catch you guys in the next video.